Welcome to Reading Bear. Today we've got a story where OP's boss orders him to skip safety rules to save time, and OP follows those orders to the letter. I work in maintenance at a mid-sized packaging plant that smells like cardboard and hot glue most days. We make boxes and pack all kinds of products into them. I'm used to noise, dust, busted bearings, jammed conveyors, and the constant hum that gets into your bones. I'm also used to doing things the right way. Lock out the energy. Tag it. Verify zero. Open guards only after interlocks are safe. Use the lift instead of the forklift forks. Wear ear pro. The usual. I'm not a hero. I just like leaving work with the same number of fingers and eyes I walked in with. The place wasn't perfect, but we had a decent safety culture until a new operations manager arrived. He showed up with a shiny watch, a pep talk about ownership, and an obsession with making quota like the building would melt if a case sealer stopped for 2 minutes. He moved fast and talked faster. I'll call him the manager. He wasn't the plant manager, but he acted like he owned the city. Right away, he went after time thieves. In his mind, time thief meant anything that didn't put boxes on a pallet right this second. Changeover, thief. Pre-shift forklift inspection, thief. Lockout, tagout, that's for major service. Not clearing a bread bag from a belt, he said. He waved his hand at my locks, like they were toys. He also had a pet phrase, be agile. It meant do what I say and don't argue. I knew what this was going to be the first day he called a stand-up and ended it by saying, production comes first. Safety is common sense. We won't hide behind fake rules. Then he canceled the weekly safety meeting and told the supervisor to roll safety topics into the huddle. That lasted one huddle. At first, I tried to work around it. I kept doing lockout. I did my checks. When something jammed, I shut it down, pulled the key, popped my lock, and did the job. The floor crew didn't mind. They want their hands attached too. But the manager watched me one morning when a wrap station kept eating tails. I had my lock on. I was up to my elbows clearing cellophane out of a nip point with a pair of pliers, and he walked up behind me with his arms crossed. Why is it dead? He asked. I said because I was inside the guard. Is that a major service? No. Then stop the theater, he said. Quick clears are not surgery. It's 2 seconds. Hit the jog. Keep it moving. I told him straight. Quick clears are exactly how people lose fingers. He did a drawn-out sigh, the kind people do when they think you're being dramatic. I don't pay you to stand and cuddle a lock, he said. Then he said the quiet part out loud. If every jam is a lockout, we'll never ship on time. I didn't bite back. I just said, are you saying we shouldn't lock out for jam clears? He gave me a look. Use common sense. That's the directive. Then he walked off. Here's where the malicious compliance seed got planted. I had a mentor once who told me to get dumb directions in writing. He said, if someone wants you to do a stupid thing, they'll either refuse to write it down or you'll get a souvenir worth money. So I sent an email that afternoon. I kept it nice and neutral. Subject line, clarification on lockout for jam clears. I asked if he wanted me to change our practice. I copied my supervisor. The manager replied in less than a minute, like he was waiting to be asked. Do not waste Lodo on jam clears. Use jog and common sense. Production first. Record downtime as mechanical, not safety. Ops. I printed that email. I printed 2 copies. One lived in my toolbox. One went inside the shift turnover binder where we keep maintenance notes and parts lists. That week, he went on a tear. He didn't just stop at lockout. He told receiving not to reject broken pallets because we can fix them. He told the lift drivers to be efficient and scoop 2 pallets at once if the load looks stable. He told the line leads to tape over the light curtains on the case erector because it's tripping when people just walk by, as if that isn't exactly what a light curtain is supposed to do. Maintenance got a special set of orders. We were to bypass an interlock on a guard that wouldn't latch right, then order the part when the PO window opens. He gave me a roll of duct tape like that was the solution. I didn't argue with him again in public. I did something else. I started obeying exactly. If he said, don't log a near miss, I didn't. If he said, bypass an interlock until a part comes in, I did, but I labeled it the way I label everything. We run a 5S board. Everything that moves gets a tag. Who touched it? Why? When? So when he told me to tape the guard switch so it doesn't trip when you open it, I used bright fluorescent labels that anyone could see from across the aisle. I wrote, bypass installed per operations, and the date. I took a photo for my handover notes like I do for leaks and odd noises. The label was neat, legible, and completely honest. The switch was taped. I didn't do it secretly. We aren't spies in this place. We're supposed to build good habits. He told the forklift drivers that pre-shift checklists were optional if you drove last shift. The checklists are on clipboards hung by the charging stations. The next day, I found clipboards gone. The lift key was hanging on a nail with a sticky note that said, "If it drives, it's fine." I took the sticky note and taped it to the center of the lift's dash. Then I wrote on the same sticky note, per 5S, pre-shift inspection, skipped per ops. I didn't add sarcasm. That's key. No sarcasm, no editorializing. Just what happened, exactly as directed. Another genius idea from him was to use the forklift to lift people on a pallet because the scissor lift was down. 2 minutes, he said. We're not building a rocket. I told him we had a man basket rated for that. He didn't want to waste time fetching special toys. He said, "Make it work." I said, "I need you to write that down." He stared. "What?" I shrugged. "It sounds like a change to our procedure. I don't want to screw it up." He sent a text to the supervisor group. "Use forks to lift operator if basket not available. Ob to spot. Let's not gum up changeovers." I took another photo. Pallet on forks. Person standing on pallet. I stood there with a tagline and a bad feeling in my gut. I wrote on the shift board, "Raised operator on pallet for changeout per ops text. Basket out of service. Ordered new wheel." Then I put the text screenshot in the maintenance log. I'm boring like that. He also didn't like that we logged safety downtime on the production report when something was stopped because a guard wouldn't latch or because we had to do lockout. That skews the numbers, he said. He told me, all downtime is mechanical. Safety isn't a stop. So I wrote mechanical on the report. But in the maintenance notes, I wrote the cause. Guard interlock stuck open. Bypassed per ops. Will order latch kit when approved. That turned into a stack of notes by the end of the week. Bypassed here, taped there, temporary fix everywhere. He told HR to stop ordering Ear Pro with the little cords on them because people look messy. I found a box of foam plugs dumped into a bin. No dispenser, no stock tracking. I printed a little sign for the bin. Ear plugs. Inventory control discontinued per ops. People laughed. It wasn't funny. I didn't file any complaints. Not then. I know my rights, and I filed a complaint before at a different job. It's not complicated, but this time, I wanted to see if doing exactly what he asked, exactly the way he asked it, with his words attached, would teach him a lesson on its own. If nobody got hurt, the natural consequence of his shortcuts would be visible enough to matter. The break room talk started to sound like a weather report for disaster. Someone's going to get crushed. Those taped curtains freaked me out. The wrap station almost grabbed my sleeve. Then a temp cut his thumb on an unguarded edge under a flap. He didn't need stitches, but the bleeding was more than a scratch. He went to the foreman and got a bandage. I asked the foreman to log it in the first aid book. He said he'd let ops decide. The next day, I checked the OSHA 300 log posted by the time clock. Nothing new. The rumor was that we don't log first aid. That's not how the rules work. You log recordables, sure, but the first aid book exists for a reason. The manager didn't want numbers anywhere that made the place look bad. The breaking point for me was the day we had a power blip and everything went crazy. That's an ordinary nightmare. Conveyors stop in bad places. Boxes sit in heaters and warp. Film sticks to things it shouldn't. Everything wants to restart out of sequence. It's the perfect time to go slow. The manager did the opposite. He ran down the aisle yelling for people to just hit reset and stop overthinking it. I was at a case sealer with the guard open because the belt had untracked. The light curtain was taped. With the guard open and light curtain useless, someone hit reset at the panel without checking the guard switch. Belt spun, the nip point jumped, and I had to pull my hand back fast. It didn't grab me. It could have. I stood there for a second with my heart punching. I wasn't scared in the way that sticks to your bones. I was angry. I flicked my lock onto the main disconnect without one more word and went through the whole lockout like a training video. I didn't explain anything to the manager. I just did it. He came over, saw the lock, and did the sigh. "We talked about this," he said. I didn't answer him. My supervisor stood between us and said, "Let him fix it." That quiet saved me from saying something I'd regret. That night, I went home and wrote down everything I could remember from that day. No drama, just facts. Who told who to what equipment, what we bypassed, what signs I'd made. I put the notes in a folder with the printed emails and the photos. I didn't file a complaint that night. The thing about malicious compliance is you have to actually comply. I wasn't going to go above or outside anything. I was going to keep obeying, keep documenting, keep labeling. The next week, an insurance auditor was due to visit for a routine check. The manager didn't do the usual make it pretty scramble. He actually said, "We're not doing fake safety for a tourist. If they ask, we explain our agility." I smiled at that word choice. Agility meant tape everywhere and numbers nowhere. He told us not to remove any labels or cover anything. He wanted to show off the speed of our changeovers, the flow of material, the lean setup. He thought the auditor would be impressed by the hustle. The auditor came and his poker face was good, but not that good. He did the parking lot talk with the plant manager, shook hands, and then we walked. I stayed on maintenance calls, but I kept catching glimpses of him. His eyes went to the obvious things first. Missing cage door on the baler, a bypassed light curtain, the taped guard switch, the pallet on forks with a scuff where we'd raised a guy. He asked a lot of questions. He touched the bypass label I'd written and read it out loud. He asked for training records. He asked for the last month of forklift checklists. The supervisor pointed at the nail with the key and the sticky note still taped to the dash. The auditor blinked. He took photos. We didn't hear much after he left. The plant manager went into a closed-door meeting with the manager. The rumor was that he got scolded. For 2 days, things were weirdly quiet, like right before a storm. Then on a bright morning, 2 people in plain clothes and steel toes showed up at the gatehouse, signed in, and introduced themselves on the floor as compliance officers. Not insurance, not a customer. OSHA. If you've never lived through an OSHA visit, imagine every bad habit you've ever ignored suddenly being a quiz question. They don't shout. They don't roll in like a SWAT team. They walk, look, ask, and write. They ask normal questions. They ask for paperwork. They ask employees what they do and how they do it and who told them to do it like that. They ask to see the 300 log and first aid records. They ask for names. They don't care about your quota. They care if you can point to a binder and show that people were trained to do the thing they're doing. One of them introduced herself to me while I was retensioning a belt. She asked, "Do you lock out for this?" I said yes when my hands are inside and no when it's a quick adjust with tools away from motion. And I explained where the line is and how we verify. She asked if that matched our written procedure. I said it did, or it did before, recent changes. She asked what changes. I took a breath and showed her the turnover binder. The printed email was there, laminated clear by the flip sleeves, right next to a photo of the taped switch with the label, and my note about lifting an operator on a pallet per ops text. I said, "I am doing what my manager directed. I labeled it because we label everything." Her face didn't change much, but she wrote a lot after that. They split up and talked to a few of the lift drivers. One admitted, honest as a puppy, that he hadn't done a pre-shift in days because we've been told to stop wasting time. They stood in front of the case erector and looked at the taped light curtain. The manager tried to hover and explain how we're fixing that. One officer asked very calmly, "Is it fixed?" He said it would be soon. She looked at the tape without touching it, then wrote, "They asked for the invoice for the replacement guard and the purchase request for the latch kit." He said the PO window wasn't open. They asked what that meant. He tried to say something about budgets. They wrote, "They asked me if there had been any injuries or near misses. I told them about the temp's thumb. I told them about the power blip and the jog that almost caught my hand. I told them I'd asked for the thumb cut to be in the first aid book. They asked to see the book. The foreman couldn't find it. The officer asked for the OSHA 300 log. The log had nice round numbers and not many entries. She looked at the dates and asked who kept it. HR said they did. She asked where they got the reportable information. HR looked at the manager. The manager said, "We're improving our processes." She wrote more. They didn't shut us down on the spot. They rarely do unless they see something so bad it can't be left alone. They asked that the taped interlocks be removed immediately. They asked that the light curtains be returned to service. They asked that nobody be raised on forks again. They asked for proof that the guards would be repaired with actual parts, not tape. They asked to see training material on lockout, forklift, and hazard communication. They took copies. They took copies of my labels too. I didn't know that was a thing, but it is when you slap per ops on them. "I label everything," I said again. Nobody laughed. The manager tried to spin during the closing discussion. He said he'd inherited a culture of convenience and was actively shifting to a safety mindset. He said the tape was temporary. He said we misunderstood his directive about lockout. He said I was overzealous with signage. The officer didn't argue. She said they would send a letter with citations and proposed penalties. She recommended immediate corrective actions and warned about repeat and willful classifications if they found similar issues on record or if management had directed bypasses. The plant manager looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. After they left, the manager told me to remove all my labels. I said that labels are part of our 5S, and they describe conditions. He told me to remove anything that said per ops. I said, those are accurate. If I remove them, I'm altering records. He told me he was my boss. I said, yes, and you directed the condition. If you want to change the condition, we can fix the guard, and then I'll remove the bypass label, because the bypass is gone. He walked away, red in the neck. My supervisor avoided eye contact for the rest of the shift. I went back to fixing machines without tape. The letter from OSHA came faster than I expected. It was thick. We didn't see it first, obviously, but we felt it. The plant manager showed up with the regional safety guy, who used to only be a name on an email thread. He looked at the taped light curtain like it insulted his mother. It was gone by then, but we all remembered. They rolled a cart up the aisle stacked with guard kits, latch assemblies, switch blocks, face shields, and new earplug dispensers. It was like Christmas, if Christmas came with a warning label. Then came the meeting. They pulled leads and maintenance into the conference room. The plant manager did the speech about serious deficiencies, unacceptable exposure, and leadership failures. He didn't name the manager directly, but he didn't have to. Everyone knew. The regional safety guy went through the list like a grocery receipt. Machine guarding, interlocks bypassed, lockout ignored for jam clears, forklift misuse, training records missing, first aid and record keeping messed up, hazard communication binders out of date. He said OSHA classified some of it as serious and some of it as willful. He said those words like they were sharp. There was a number. I'm not going to pretend I saw the official paperwork then, but the number everyone repeated in the break room after was a hair over 200 grand in proposed fines. People didn't joke for once. You could feel the air change when a company starts seeing money fly out the window because someone wanted to shave minutes off a changeover. Money is real to them in a way blood should be, but often isn't. 200,000 was very real. You could also feel something else. Fear. Not from me, from the manager. It's funny how quickly a person can go from strutting to quiet. He had a meeting with HR, then another with the plant manager. He stopped making his speeches on the floor. He stopped yelling about agility. He started carrying a notebook and writing things down like everyone else. He tried to make friendly with me once by saying, "We got off on the wrong foot." I wasn't cruel. I said I'm here to keep equipment safe and running. He nodded like that was news. Here's the part people always ask. Did I get in trouble for labeling everything per ops? No. I didn't hand anything to OSHA they didn't ask for. I didn't call them. I didn't lie. I didn't sugarcoat. I said what was true and showed what I documented in the ordinary course of doing my job the way I'd been told to do it. I obeyed the instructions. That's the malicious compliance. He said, don't use lockout for jam clears. I didn't. He said, bypass that guard. I did, and I labeled the bypass, because that's our practice for temporary conditions. He said, don't mark downtime as safety. I marked it as mechanical, but wrote in my notes why it happened. He said, lift a person on a pallet. I asked him to text it. He did, and I supervised without letting anyone fall. We met his production numbers, and then got to pay the bill for how we met them. The aftermath wasn't instant. OSHA letters don't become checks overnight. There's a period where lawyers and consultants dance. The company brings in a consultant who used to work for OSHA. This happens more than you'd think, and he walks around telling us the same things we've been saying for months. You need an authorized lockout list. You need written procedures. You need training that isn't just a signature on a line. You need to reinstall guards, not tape them. You need a work order that says a bypass exists and a due date to remove it. You need forklift checklists back on the clips. He said we needed a safety committee. I raised my hand and asked if it would meet for real or if it would be canceled for agility. He didn't laugh, but a few people did. They did try to find out where the complaint came from. That's what management does when the spotlight is on. They look for the leak. I stayed out of that. People speculate, but the truth is we had half a dozen reasons for OSHA to visit. Insurance could have told them. A temp worker could have called. A delivery driver could have taken a photo of a pallet of flammables under a fan and sent it in. OSHA can inspect based on a complaint, a referral, or a special emphasis program. You don't need a hero to blow a whistle when you leave the whistle sitting on the forklift. Still, HR pulled me in for a check-in. They asked if I was comfortable at work. I said I'm fine as long as I can do my job the way it's written. They asked if I felt any retaliation. That word was interesting to hear. Someone somewhere was scared enough to say it to HR. I said no, and that I know my rights if that changes. They nodded. It was all polite. After that, the manager didn't speak to me directly for a while. He'd tell a supervisor to tell me things. It was like middle school. The plant changed fast after the citations. They threw money at guards. Real money, not tape. We replaced broken interlocks with new safety-rated ones that don't stick. We took off every piece of duct tape and threw it in a trash bag that could have built a canoe. We got the scissor lift repaired in a hurry and the man basket inspected. The forklift checklists reappeared, laminated, with a pen tied to each clipboard. The key stopped living on a nail. Someone actually fixed the latch on the charging station cabinet so the clipboards have a home. You'd think it would always be like this. You'd be wrong. We did lockout for jam clears. Not every tiny hiccup, but anything that put a hand near a moving part got treated like a hand near a moving part. It added time. It also added a layer of calm I didn't realize I'd missed. We installed more emergency stop cords along the conveyors. We put a guard back on the bailer door that had been temporarily removed. So long the metal around the bolt holes had polished from people touching it on their way by. The regional safety guys set up a stop work card system where anyone could stop a task if it felt unsafe. People rolled their eyes and then used it more than you'd think. They posted the citations on the bulletin board like they're supposed to. People read them like a weird true crime story, following the language. Willful bypass of machine guarding. Failure to ensure lockout procedures during servicing. Unsafe elevated work practices. Inadequate forklift pre-use inspections. Record-keeping deficiencies. It sounded clinical and heavy at the same time. There was a number on each one. The total at the bottom hurt, but it also looked like a receipt for someone else's bad choices. That's what money is sometimes. A scorecard for risk someone didn't want to acknowledge when it was free to do the right thing. As for the manager, he lasted a little longer than I expected and then didn't. He was reassigned first, then gone. People speculated whether he left on his own or was shown the door. Companies don't write, "We fired him for being reckless" in a memo. They write, "Seeking other opportunities," and move on. A new operations manager came in who knew the words energy control and could point to the binder where the procedures live. She didn't talk about agility. She talked about stable flow. Production didn't crash. It improved because we stopped wasting time on fixes that create more mess than they solve. Now for the part where I admit what I did and didn't do. I never refused a direct order that put me or someone else in immediate danger during that mess. If he had told me to put my hand inside a nip point with power on, I would have said no and called it. I didn't have to do that because he liked other people to push buttons while he stood behind them. I never called OSHA. I didn't need to. The conditions were loud without me. I did obey, in the plainest sense. I obeyed his directive to stop doing lockout for jam clears. And I obeyed his directive to bypass a guard. And I obeyed his directive to lift a person on a pallet once when the lift was down. I obeyed by doing those things openly, labeling them, logging them, and not pretending they were anything else. I didn't make a show. I didn't add drama. I just kept my habits. Write it, label it, file it. If you're wondering whether I felt bad about the fines, I didn't. Not for a second. We all know what a hand looks like after a nip point gets it. We all know what a forklift looks like after it tips. The price of tape is cheap. The cost of tape is not. The company saved money for a few weeks by making everything agile. Then they paid more in one letter than our maintenance budget for months. That's not a victory lap. It's math. A while after the dust settled, the plant manager asked if I would help rewrite the lockout procedures and train new hires. He called it leveraging your experience. I said yes, because I like things that are written down and make sense. It came with a small raise. Not life-changing, but enough to make me smile when I bought better pliers. The new operations manager sits in the safety meeting and doesn't check her phone. That's new. There's a tiny epilogue I have to include because it feels right. We had a follow-up visit to verify abatement. Same calm walkthrough. Same clipboards. But this time the officer touched the guards, and they didn't fall off in her hand. She asked a lift driver about pre-shift checks, and he pointed to a clipboard with a fresh sheet and a neat signature and notes about a slow break that maintenance had already taken care of. She looked at me and asked if there had been any Changes in leadership. I said yes. She nodded. It shows, she said, and left it at that. If you're thinking about doing what I did, here's the advice I'll give you that nobody gave me straight. Don't be the hero who fights every order with a speech. Be the boring person who writes it down. Ask for the directive in writing. Label the condition honestly. Log what you do and why. Don't hide the tape. Don't make the place look good for a visit if the place isn't good. Let the truth be visible in big, simple letters. If someone's going to cut corners, make sure the corners are labeled with their name. The rules are not suggestions because someone got dramatic. The rules exist because someone got hurt in a place that smelled like cardboard and hot glue, a lot like ours. I still keep that printed email in my toolbox. It's dog-eared now and has a coffee ring on it. I don't look at it to feel smug. I look at it to remember how fast a person can walk into a place and decide they're smarter than physics. I look at it to remind myself that doing something for 2 minutes is enough time for a life to change. I look at it and then I put my lock on, tug it twice, and go to work. We didn't become saints. Someone still tries to step over a conveyor instead of walking around it. Someone still thinks wearing ear pro on their neck counts. People still toss gloves on the floor when they're done with a job. But now when I see the manager, our new one, frown at that and pick them up, I feel that tiny sense of relief that comes when you're not the only adult in the room. The day the old manager left, the floor felt lighter. Not because we didn't have problems anymore, but because we had permission again to do the obvious right thing without a debate about agility. It's funny what sticks from an ugly stretch. The day the light curtain was taped, the plant felt like a house with the smoke alarm unplugged. The day the tape came off and the replacement part clicked into place with a solid latch, I pressed the guard just to hear the sensor light change. That little click still makes me feel like I got something back. I didn't know I'd lost control over the next 5 seconds of my hands' lives. People have asked me if the manager learned anything. I don't know where he landed. I hope he learned to not treat safety like a speed bump. I hope he learned that telling someone to ignore the rules won't make those rules disappear. It just makes the bill arrive with your name on it. If he didn't, then maybe his next OSHA letter will be an even bigger number. That's not my business now. My business is this. When a machine is down, I lock it out. When a guard is off, the line is off. When someone tries to climb on forks, I point at the man basket in the rule book. When a label goes on, it says exactly what's true. I'm a simple guy. I make lists. I label things. A lot of problems can't survive that kind of daylight. So yes, the title is true. The boss insisted I ignore safety rules. I obeyed in the plainest way, no flair, no tantrum, and his plan ran into the only committee that matters. Reality, with OSHA as the secretary taking minutes. The fine was about 200 grand. The lesson was priceless. And for once, the right people paid it. Anyway, thank you for watching. See you again tomorrow.